Yo, what's going on YouTube, and welcome to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and it is that time of the year. It is the 2021 preseason power rankings. Before the beginning of the 2021 NHL season, we're going to be taking a look at that in this video. If you like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL, want to see trade rumor videos, as well as my weekly power rankings, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe down below, and let's take a look at the preseason power rankings for the 2021 NHL season. Alright, so, welcome back. Apologize for that. Welcome back to our power ranking series. Every single week we are going to be doing a power rankings video probably every Friday. That's my plan. Every Friday. That's what we did last year. Friday at 6 p.m. will be our weekly power rankings. So this is our preseason rankings. So no, it is not on a Friday, but every power rankings moving forward will be on a Friday. So if you're interested in seeing that, make sure to stay tuned. Every Friday at 6 p.m., we're going to be doing a weekly power rankings. This is week 1 of the 2021 NHL season. A lot of hype and a lot of excitement going into this season. A couple of changes to the power rankings format, which you've seen from last season. There's going to be a different format, which I'll show you in a second once we get going. But obviously, a lot of change in the NHL, so we're going to be taking a look at all of that right now. So, at number 31 is the Chicago Blackhawks from Windy City. I think the Chicago Blackhawks are going to struggle, especially out of the gate this season. One of their youngsters, Kirby Dach, got injured in the World Junior Championship with Team Canada. He's going to be out for a while with a wrist injury. He just had surgery, so hopefully he heals quite quickly, especially for the Blackhawks fans. Jonathan Toews will also be out of the lineup, the captain of the Chicago Blackhawks. So another huge loss for them. They lost Corey Crawford in the offseason. He has since retired. So congratulations there to Corey Crawford, whether he wanted to leave the game or not. Obviously, that's more of an issue for New Jersey, which we'll be talking about in a second. But the Chicago Blackhawks are going to have a rough start to this season. And a lot of changes on the blue line. Just a lot of changes overall. And now, I mean, this is, the Blackhawks, they need to start making their way up. I think Stan Bowman realizes this is another rebuild year, though, but the fans want to see potential, and that's what they want to see from guys like Nylander, DeBrincat, and those other guys, especially Boqvist on the blue line. So we'll see what happens with the Blackhawks this year, but I have them at 31 right now. At number 30 is the New Jersey Devils, like I just mentioned. And a big reason is because Corey Schneider will not be there for the Devils this season. He just announced his retirement. He was supposed to be the 1B for Mackenzie Blackwood, who is the young goaltender for the New Jersey Devils. There's going to be a lot more pressure on Blackwood this season. Scott Wedgwood, we're going to see more of the Wedgwood-Blackwood duo in Jersey because that just seems to be how things are going. Gilly Sem will likely become the starter for the Binghamton Devils as the third goaltender in the Devils organization as Crawford has left the organization. Schneider left in the offseason as well. So the Devils look a little bit different on the blue line as well. We've seen Ryan Murray come in, which may be a good move. I think they got him for very cheap, a former top 10 draft pick. There's a lot of hype around Ryan Murray back in the day. He's obviously lost that a little bit. They've also added guys like Andreas Janssen, who I think could be nice additions, potentially in the top 6 for the Devils. And I think that's their weakness. They need more guys in the top 6. We need to see the emergence of guys like Miles Wood, Pavel Zacha, Jesper Bratt. Those guys need to step it up if the Devils want a sniffing chance at the playoffs, especially in that division. That East division is going to be brutal. I think it's going to really damage the New Jersey Devils this year. They don't match up well in this division. At number 29 is the Detroit Red Wings, baby. The worst team in the NHL last season. I don't have them as the worst team right now. I think the additions they made in between the pipes, moving on from Jimmy Howard and bringing in Thomas Greiss, was a huge addition by Steve Yzerman. Not to mention he's also brought in guys like Vladislav Nemestikov, who I think is a great addition. They've had a guy like Valtteri Filppula, a great veteran in the organization, coming back. So, the Red Wings aren't perfect. I mean, they've added guys like, Mark Stahl on the blue line with that trade with the Rangers. So they've made little moves here and there. Are they really that great of a team? No. That's why I have them at 29. But they are better than they were last season, which is Not saying much considering they were worst in the NHL. Moving on to number 28, we are starting to look at the California team. Starting at number 28 is the San Jose Sharks. Yes, I think the Sharks are going to struggle this season and will be the worst team in the West Division. I think the issues with the Sharks stem from the fact that their blue line has gotten older and the players on that blue line have regressed, and they are playing big roles. Guys like Brent Burns, Mark-Edward Vlasic, Erik Karlsson. Once you hit 30 in the NHL and you start to regress, it's hard for these guys to come back. And I think we could see that this season from the San Jose Sharks. Radim Šimik is now out with an injury, so another tough blow to that blue line for the San Jose Sharks. They're already relying on a lot of young guys like Waugh and Middleton, and it's going to be that much more strained now with Šimik out to start the season. Not to mention their goaltending is a little bit shaky. Martin Jones really struggled last season for the Sharks, and they bring in Devan Dubnyk from the Minnesota Wild, but there's a reason Minnesota traded him out. He struggled last year as well. So the San Jose Sharks are banking on at least one of those guys to get things going, and I don't know how confident I am in that. Again, once you talk, especially goaltenders, once they start to regress, they never come back, and these two goaltenders both regressed last season. This could be a tough one for the Sharks. They do have some promising guys up front like Kevin Labanc, obviously, the two-headed monster in Logan Couture and Tomas Hertl. But other than that, the Sharks are not that lethal of a team, and I think they will struggle in the West Division. Now moving on to another California team. At number 27 is the Los Angeles Kings. I think they're going to take strides moving forward because they have a guy like number 2 overall draft pick Quinton Byfield, who I think is going to help the team right out of the gate. The goaltending is a little bit shaky. Cal Peterson needs to step up as a starter if they want any more of a chance than what I've given them so far. Jonathan Quick has regressed. Like I just talked about with the other goaltenders, once you hit your 30s and you start to regress, we're starting to see that with Jonathan Quick, unfortunately. And I think it's going to be a tough situation in between the pipes for the Kings this season. Also up front, things are getting a little bit interesting. They are getting older, and they have the young guys coming up, which we saw in the World Junior Championship. But as of this season, I think it's going to be another slow, frustratingly slow offense for the Los Angeles Kings forward core. Now moving up to number 26. This may shock a lot of people, but I think this is the season where we see some issues for the team in Tennessee, David Poyle's Nashville Predators. I think the Predators are going to struggle this season. We have the same story over and over and over again in Nashville. Kyle Turris, a big free agent they bring in. He's supposed to make a difference for the team. Now he gets moved out or bought out. Now we say the same thing about Matt Duchene, big center. He should be the guy. He kind of struggled last season. Ryan Johansson has not solidified himself as the number 1 center there in Nashville. Another big issue. And the blue line has been good. Roman Josi, we saw what he did last season, but even some of those other guys like Ekholm and Ellis continue to get older, and that blue line is starting to look a little different. Now with a youngster like Dante Fabro coming into the top pairing unit, I think by the end of this season with Roman Josi. It's going to be interesting to see what the Predators look like as the season goes along. UC Saros has to develop as a starting goaltender as well. I think that's something that's really going to plague this team if they are not able to get that. Despite a pretty good offense, now you've got a different coach in John Hines. I think a major downgrade from Laviolette. Interesting spot here for the Predators. Couple of weird moves. I do like them bringing in Granlund and Howler down the middle. But again, those are depth pieces. I don't know how much of a difference long term that will make for the Predators this season. I have them at number 26. At number 25, you may laugh at me for this one. At number 25, I have the Anaheim Ducks. Yes, the Ducks are not going to be... The Ducks are the best California team. So there you go. We're at 25, and all 3 California teams are off the board. The Anaheim Ducks, I think, maybe a little bit of bias because I am a Ducks fan. So you can argue that. But I like the goaltending. John Gibson is the best goaltender out of all the goaltenders in California, and he can put the Ducks on his back. Now, Ryan Miller is playing another season behind John Gibson, which we've seen Miller has struggled at points, but he's still been a decent goaltender at points. So the Ducks take a chance on him. It's going to be Gibson and Miller. That's the best goaltending tandem in California this season. So it's hard to argue that they can't be the best team out there. As we potentially see the emergence of a guy like Trevor Zegras, if the Anaheim Ducks sign him to an ELC, they have not done that yet, so I expect he will go back to BU. But at this point, who knows? So we'll see what happens with that, as well as some of the little moves that they made in the offseason. This team's going to look a lot different in Anaheim. I think they're going to struggle, but again, I think in that division with the California teams, I think they're the best of the bunch right at this moment. So at number 24, you may be shocked. You didn't talk about Eugene Melnick's team yet, and that's right. Yeah, we're saving them for now. Number 24 is the Ottawa Senators. I think the Ottawa Senators made some really great strides in this offseason, bringing in guys like Alex Galchenyuk, the Russian Evgeny Dadonov from the Florida Panthers. Those are some nice additions that the Ottawa Senators made this season. Not to mention, they've made a couple moves, especially in between the pipes, bringing in a guy like Matt Murray from Pittsburgh. He struggled last season. Can he pick his game back up this season with the Senators? We'll have to wait and see. But I think there's a lot of excitement there in Ottawa that this team can maybe take some steps moving forward, potentially a playoff contender as the season goes along. The last 2 years, they've been a dumpster fire and out of it for most of the year. So if they keep things interesting in the beginning of the year, I think it will be a good run, especially for guys like, Brady Tkachuk, as well as, some of the talent there, like Shabbat. I think it's really exciting. And we'll see what happens here. But I think the Senators could be an interesting, sneaky team this year. I'm not sure how I feel about the Senators right now. I don't have a good pulse on them right now. At number 23, speaking of another team, I'm not sure how I have a good pulse of this team either. I think they're going to really regress this season, specifically because of that East Division. And that's because I'm talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins. At number 23, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins as a bottom 10 team in the NHL standings. I think the Pittsburgh Penguins are starting to regress. I think their window is closing. And I think the only way this window stays open is because of goaltending. Tristan Jarry has shown last season he has struggled, as well as Matt Murray. That's why he got traded out. So a guy like Casey DeSmith is going to have to come in with Tristan Jarry as the duo in Pittsburgh. Is that going to be good enough? And the question's on the blue line. Can Brian Dumoulin stay healthy for a full season? Chris Letang, same story. Those are your top defensemen, and they haven't been healthy. And then some weird moves that we saw in the offseason by Jim Rutherford have made me even more concerned about the Pittsburgh Penguins. Trading a guy like Patrick Hornquist for Michael Matheson, I don't know how much of an upgrade that is. So the Pittsburgh Penguins, I don't know how I feel about this team. They bring in Brandon Tanev, which I think is a good move. But is he that much of an upgrade in the top six for the Penguins? I don't know. And again, we need to see the continued efforts of guys like Brian Rust and Jake Gensel. We know that they need to continue that, as well as the superstars, the big two-headed monster there in Pittsburgh in Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. So at number 23, yes, is the Pittsburgh Penguins. At number 22, we're taking a look in the Sunshine State as we take a look at the Florida Panthers at number 22. The Florida Panthers are one of those teams that I think, again, I don't have a great pulse on them either. That's why they're in this weird spot. And I put teams ahead of them because I just think what they did in the offseason didn't help them. And I think that's why, I think losing guys like Hoffman, Dadonov, you're putting a lot of hope into the young guys like Owen Tippett, and Grishekov or something like that. They're putting a lot of Denisenko, Owen Tippett and Grigory Denisenko in the top six as rookies. The Florida Panthers, Joel Quenneville, is he going to mesh well with these guys? Are they going to fit in the system? So these are the kind of questions I just don't have an answer to. And there's still the question that Anton Lundell could make this team out of training camp, which I think is a bit of a long shot, but he could potentially do that, especially with the experience he had in Europe at the end of 2020 going here into 2021. So we'll see what happens there with the Florida Panthers. And not to mention goaltending, Chris Driedger and Sergei Bobrovsky. I don't know how I feel about that goaltending tandem, especially with what we saw from Bobrovsky last year. Again, we talk about those older goaltenders when they regress. It's hard for them to get that spark back. At number 21 is the Arizona Coyotes at number 21 in my preseason power rankings. I think the Coyotes, Again, talk about another team I don't have a pulse for. It's the Arizona Coyotes. The only reason I have them ahead of teams like Pittsburgh, Ottawa, and Florida is the coaching. I think Phil Housley, despite what he did in Buffalo, Phil Housley is a good coach. I think Rick Tocchet is a good coach. The team seems to follow that structure. Reminds me a lot of the Islanders on the East Coast. Not a huge amount of scoring and skill, but they're able to play a reliable defensive game. And I think the only difference between them and the Islanders is the Islanders' goaltending coaching is just a little bit better, and the management overall for the Islanders is better. And that's why I have the Islanders a little bit higher up in the standings. But I think the Arizona Coyotes, it's gonna be a tough year for them. Like I said, what is Nick Schmaltz? What is Christian Dvorak? Those guys still have to develop, and they've been injured, so it's hard to even argue what are they at this point because they haven't been playing all that much. And obviously, the whole situation with their captain, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, I think the management and the relationship between OEL and the management has been a little bit tainted this offseason, whether OEL wanted to leave or the Coyotes wanted to trade his mega contract. At the end of the day, there's a little bit of a miscommunication there, maybe a little bit of a tainted relationship. So we'll see what happens moving forward, but I think it's going to be interesting what happens with the Coyotes this season. And not to mention, their goaltending has to stay healthy with Antti Raanta and Darcy Kemper. All right, at number 20, we are heading up to the North Division. Actually, no, there's the second North Division team. I already talked about the Senators, but at number 20 is the Winnipeg Jets. The Winnipeg Jets, I think they have a really good goaltending situation, and Laurent Brossoit and Connor Hellebuyck. But then comes some of the issues. The blue line. Tucker Poolman has looked decent at points. Sami Niku has looked pretty solid, but this is a different looking Winnipeg Jets team, and a little bit of uncertainty in my mind. Paul Maurice has been there for a couple years. We're starting to see a little bit of an issue here. I think in that North Division, again, I think they get killed with this North Division. In the Central, it would have been a lot easier, I think, for the Jets to make the playoffs. But in this division, it's going to be brutal. With teams like, Vancouver, Toronto, the Alberta teams, it's going to be tough for the Winnipeg Jets to get in the postseason this year. All right, so now moving on to number 19. After the moves they made in the offseason, I still just don't have enough faith in that team upstate in New York. The Buffalo Sabres at number 19. I know I have some Buffalo Sabres fans out there. I hate to say it, but I just don't know how I feel about this goaltending. Linus Ullmark and Carter Hutton, I just don't know how reliable of a tandem that is for the Sabres moving forward. I think they got a couple of great pieces. I think a guy like Rasmus Dahlin, Ristolainen on the blue line, the two Rasmuses, as well as some of the other guys they have there, there's hope. And then they bring in Taylor Hall to play with Victor Olofsson and Jack Eichel on the top line. But then you need to see the emergence of guys in the bottom six. They just signed Riley Sheahan to replace Zemgus Girgensson, who was going to be out for the start of the season. So, we need to see guys have bounce-back seasons. Guys like Jeff Skinner. Eric Stahl, I think, was a great low-key addition by the Buffalo Sabres. I think he's going to help out their organization. But it's, again, I don't know how I feel about the goaltending for the Sabres. And really, even for the matter, the coaching as well. At number 18 is the Minnesota Wild. The Minnesota Wild are an interesting team here. I have them higher up because I think they benefit from the Central Division. But not only that, I like where they stand in actually, they're playing in the West Division with teams like the California teams, the Arizona Coyotes. I think they benefit from playing in that West Division. I think that's the easiest division of the four divisions. And I think they can make the playoffs. I think you can make an argument they get in the postseason in 2021. I think what they're missing really, in my eyes, is the goaltending situation. And some of you may be proud of, and comfortable with Cam Talbot, but if you saw what he did in Alberta the last couple of seasons with Calgary and Edmonton, there is reason to be concerned. And the fact that they signed him to a little bit of a longer contract. Bill Guerin, this is my first move. I'm a little on the fence. Hopefully it works out. Hopefully the goaltending coaching is able to get Talbot going. But there are some concerns in between the pipes. I do like what they have on the back end. They still have a really good blue line. Guys like Ryan Suter newly captain. Congratulations, Jared Spurgeon, Matt Dumba, Jonas Brodin. They have a really solid defense there in Minnesota. And not to mention, the offense is going to get a huge lightning bolt inserted in there with a guy like Kirill Kaprizov. I think he's going to add a lot of offense to this team. As the guys like Zach Parise start to regress, they also added a guy like Marcus Johansson into the wingers core, just so in the event that Parise is out, it takes the blow a little bit away when you have a guy like Marcus Johansson as well as Kirill Kaprizov. You see the emergence of guys like Joel Eriksson Ek down the middle. They've already traded Luke Kunin, so it's going to be interesting to see what the Wild look like this year. Again, Kevin Fiala had a really good season last year. Can he continue that potentially on the top line with Kaprizov? We'll have to wait and see, but I think there's a lot of excitement, in my opinion, that the Wild can get in the postseason this year. How far they go, that's another question, but they got to get there first, so we'll see what happens with the Wild. At number 17, I have the St. Louis Blues. Talk about not having a pulse on a team. This is the team that I'm really interested to see what they're going to do this year, because I don't really know where they stand. The St. Louis Blues just lost their captain, Alex Pietrangelo, and they've replaced him with Ryan O'Reilly, who was a great captain, but now there's rumors that there may be some sour grapes for Vladimir Tarasenko not getting the captaincy over Ryan O'Reilly, spending 7 seasons in St. Louis. Now Ryan O'Reilly is the right choice, but again, now maybe a little bit of turmoil in the locker room. We just don't know the whole scenario. And can Binnington have a bounce-back season after a tough season last year? And Ville Husso as the backup behind Binnington, who they're probably going to have to rely on more this season than a regular non-COVID season. This may be interesting for the St. Louis Blues. I don't know, man. This is going to be an interesting team to keep an eye on. At number 16 is John Tortorella's Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, this may have to change. I'm not too happy about the Blue Jackets right now because of Pierre-Luc Dubois. Dubois is not on the roster right now. He is your first-line center. He's your penalty killer, your power play guy. So losing Pierre-Luc Dubois, it comes down to what is Jarmo Kekalainen going to get in return for a potential Pierre-Luc Dubois. Is it a Patrick Laine? Is it a Dougie Hamilton or a Jacob Slavin from Carolina? What's the deal here for the Blue Jackets? They have to figure this out. Now, I do like their goaltending tandem of Merzlikins and Korpisalo. I think that's pretty solid. Trading Matthew Barzal for Pierre-Luc Dubois, no, not happening. But anyway, that's just a weird article that I saw. But it's interesting that we're talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois. So they do have to figure out some kind of deal there. I like the goaltending. John Tortorella, love him, hate him. He does have a good coaching style, especially once you get into the postseason. We saw what he did to the Leafs last year. And they have a solid defense. I think even losing a guy like Ryan Murray, sending him to Jersey, doesn't hurt them all that much. I think guys like Zach Werenski and Seth Jones dominate this blue line. They are one of the best pairings in the NHL right now. So we'll see how far that goes for the Blue Jackets. But their lack of offense, the lack of depth on the blue line and up front could hinder the Columbus Blue Jackets this season, especially without Gustav Nyquist to start the season up front. Okay, so this is how close I have the Alberta teams. At number 15 is the Edmonton Oilers. At number 14 is the Calgary Flames. I have both teams right next to each other because I don't think there's that big of a gap between the two. And I think the only real difference between the two right at this point is the goaltending. I think Jacob Markstrom was a huge addition for Brad Treliving, the general manager of the Calgary Flames. Adding him to the fold really puts them a step above the Edmonton Oilers. And the fact they're going to be playing each other 10 times this season, Jesus. There's going to be a lot of hype around these two teams playing each other. And I think in the head-to-head, Edmonton will not have the edge over the Flames because of the goaltending situation, where you've got Mikko Koskinen and Mike Smith. Talk about a bad goaltending tandem. I probably should have had them lower. I think that's really going to hurt the Oilers this season, not getting a guy like Holtby, not getting a guy like Jacob Markstrom. All right, so moving on up to number 13. Lucky number 13 is the Dallas Stars, the defending Western Conference champions. Just got, they got beat by the Tampa Bay Lightning in 6 games or 5 games. Was it 5 games? I don't remember. It doesn't really matter. They made it to the Stanley Cup final last year. I have them regressing a little bit, and some people have them missing the playoffs this season because of that that Central Division. I think they get into the postseason. I think they're one of the better teams in that division. I think they're a middle of the pack team there, but I think they get in. And I think the biggest losses for them to start the season are they're going to be without Ben Bishop and Tyler Seguin to start this season. And those are two key pieces to this team. They still have a lot of good guys on the blue line, guys. We talk about this all the time. The Klingberg and what's the other guy's name? I always forget his name. Miro Heiskanen. They've got a good blue line there. We need to see the emergence of guys like Rupe Hintz and Dennis Gurianov. We know how good those guys can be. Can they continue that for the Dallas Stars? That's going to be huge for the Stars this year. Moving on up to number 12 is the New York Rangers. I think the Rangers, a lot of things went right for the Rangers, and some people have even mentioned maybe too many things went right. They were firing on all cylinders. Artemi Panarin, Ryan Strome, Mika Zibanejad, Capo Caco really didn't even hit his stride. Hopefully he does that this year. Tony DeAngelo, Adam Fox. Will they have the productive seasons they did like last year? I don't know. And, Georgiev had some unreal numbers last season. Can he do that again? And Igor Shesterkin is officially the starter for the Rangers. There's no more King Hank to save you. Not that he needed him last season, but can he, being the number one guy there, can he handle that pressure? So we're going to see all of that this year for the Rangers. I have them at number 12. At number 11 is the Boston Bruins. Now, talk about adding a wrench into that East Division. In the regular Metropolitan Division, you already have Washington, Philly, the Islanders, and the Rangers. And now you add Boston. That's 5 teams that are really solid. I think those are going to be the 5 teams in that East Division truly competing. Not to discredit teams like Jersey or Pittsburgh, but I really think that these are the 5 teams in that division. And I hate to say it, those are the teams that are going to be fighting for those playoff spots. I think, there's only 4 playoff spots in that East Division, so one of those at least is going to be very unhappy. And potentially a team like Pittsburgh, too, who may have their expectations a little higher than I do. Now moving on up to number 10. We're moving on to the top 10 here. It's the New York Islanders. The New York Islanders remain in the top 10. I think a lot of people have them at like 15, 16, 18. They just went to the Eastern Conference Finals. And you can make an argument they put the best test up against the Tampa Bay Lightning in last year's playoffs. So they lost to the Stanley Cup champions. They lost to them in 6 games, and they dragged them to overtime twice. So, the Islanders, I think, are still underrated. Again, call me biased, whatever, but I think 10 is a fair mark for the Islanders. And if you're still betting against the Islanders for the past 2 seasons, if they have not proven to you that they are a legit team, I don't know what it is going to take. Even if the Islanders win the Stanley Cup, people will still say they are not that good. But again, you look at them on paper, they're not supposed to be that good. But look at how they buy into the system, the goaltending coaching. Again, we're going to see Ilya Sorokin come into the fold for the Islanders. Thank God, long awaited for that. So we're going to have Sorokin and Semyon Varlamov, the 2 Russian goaltenders, goaltending for the Islanders this year. I think it's going to be huge for the Islanders. The blue line looks a little bit different. We're going to see Noah Dobson featured a little more now that Devin Taves has moved on from the Islanders, got sent over to Colorado this offseason. They re-signed Matt Barzal, so that concern is gone. Josh Ho-Sang has been placed on waivers. I won't be doing a video about that, but the saga for Ho-Sang seems like it'll be over with the Islanders. I think the additions that they made are really from internal. Adding guys like Oliver Wahlstrom, Kiefer Bellows into the bottom 6, potentially jumping to the top 6 by the end of the season. Hopefully they put Anthony Beauvillier on that line with Barzal and Lee. We'll see what happens. But I think the Islanders are an interesting team this year. At number 9 is the Montreal Canadiens. Les Montreal des Canadiens. Now, I think the Canadiens are one of those teams that, I think they're going to make some strides forward. I think on the blue line, Alexander Romanov is going to be a huge piece for this Canadiens team on the blue line. And as Shea Weber continues to get older, they still have Jeff Petrie, who is a good a good defenseman. Now we're going to see a little bit of a difference in between the pipes, as you've got Jake Allen backing up Carey Price, which I think is a huge upgrade from some of the goaltenders we've seen for the Habs over the last couple years. They're putting young guys in too early. Now they've got a well-established backup / 1B option for Carey Price and Jake Allen. At number 8 is the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, the Maple Leafs are at number 8 because that North Division is pretty tough. And I think they're going to see some struggles throughout the season there. No, I do not think they're the best team in Canada. Some would argue they are. Give me a second. Apologize for that. At number 8 is the Leafs. Really good forward group. Their blue line looks different. I wouldn't say it's necessarily better. They lost Tyson Barrie. They brought in TJ Brody. They moved out some of those other guys. They bring in guys like, we're going to see Justin Hall come back, which he's probably going to be a 7th defenseman. And then you've got guys like Rasmus Sandin, Mikko Lehtinen is his name, and Timothy Liljegren, who they don't even have listed on the roster. So I wonder what's going on with Liljegren in that regard. You have same goaltending as last year, Freddie Anderson and Jack Campbell. And then up front, you have the big 6, So we'll see what happens with this Leafs team. Are they going to be good enough? I don't know. They lost a lot of pieces. Not to say that I don't like Wayne Simmons, but I think that's a downgrade from guys like Janssen and Kapanen. It's going to hurt them. Now, if Nick Robertson can come in, I think he takes the role, hopefully from a guy like Kapanen for a lot cheaper. But that's only one hole, and I don't know how many holes they're going to be able to fill. Kyle Dubas did what he could do. There's not much he could do. In the salary cap era, with the amount of contracts that they have specifically up front, you're going to have to pay for that in some way or another, whether that's your backup goaltender or your blue line or the lack of depth up front. And unfortunately for the Leafs, it's taken a toll on everything. So, yes, I have them at number 8. But again, this is a team that could very easily be the best team in the NHL this year, or potentially even miss the playoffs, depending on how things go. At number 7, I have the Carolina Hurricanes. I think Rod Brind'Amour is a great coach, and we've seen that blue line has to be one of the best in the league. I think what we've seen when they've added guys like Brady Shea, who, yeah, they paid him a lot. I think they're paying him more than they should, especially what they paid in that deal with the Rangers. But you've got Brady Shea. You've got guys like Dougie Hamilton, Jacob Slavin, Brett Pesce. And then we're not even talking about the guys that are still in the system. A guy like Jake Bean, who won AHL Defenseman of the Year, he doesn't even make this lineup right now. That's how good they are and how stacked they are on the blue line. So the Carolina Hurricanes are going to be interesting this season. We're going to see the continued emergence of guys like Sebastian Aho, Teuvo Teravainen, obviously a guy like Andrei Svechnikov. I'm really excited to see what they do. And if they keep a guy like Martin Necas around, this is going to be a really interesting team in Carolina. So I'm excited to see what Rod Brind'Amour and the Canes do this year. But I have them at number 7 in the power rankings. At number 6, we are heading to BC as we are heading to the Vancouver Canucks. At number 6 in my preseason power rankings. I think the Vancouver Canucks, Travis Green has done a great job as a coach. And we're starting to see, Jim Benning, for all the flack he took over the past couple years, he's been drafting guy after guy after guy that seems to be working out. And we're seeing that again this year. Potentially even next year as well. Vasily Podkolzin maybe. But what they've done with guys like Brock Besser, Elias Pettersson, Quinn Hughes, potentially Nils Höglander this season. A lot of hype around Nils Höglander right now. And like I said, potentially even Vasily Podkolzin next season. The hype train is already starting for Höglander. Again, he had a little bit of a head start playing in the SHL at the end of last season, at the end of 2020 into 2021. He has a little bit of a head start over these other guys. But if he could keep that going through training camp into the regular season, watch out for Nils Höglander this season. All right, so at number 5 is the Washington Capitals. Now, the Capitals are a wild card. I am putting them quite high. But because of the recent addition to the blue line, as well as, the changes in between the pipes, there's a little bit of discrepancy whether they should be further up or further down. But I have them at number 5 right now. The Washington Capitals, Ilya Samsonov is the starter for the Caps moving forward. And I don't know what they're going to do behind him because Henrik Lundqvist is out. Likely going to be one of the Hershey Bears guys, either Vitek Vanacek or Phoenix Copley. They probably have to figure that out. Maybe they take a look at a goaltender that maybe gets placed on waivers if Jimmy Howard or maybe one of those guys is available. Maybe the Capitals would consider that. Obviously, adding big Zdeno Chara onto the blue line. Nice addition there. They've added Justin Schultz as well. So this is going to be a different team. You added Connor Sheary as well. Kind of sloppy seconds from the Pittsburgh Penguins. But listen, you do what you got to do. Pittsburgh's had some solid success, and they seem to be taken from those guys. Another good season from Jacob Vrana is going to be needed. TJ Oshie, Nick Backstrom, how much have they regressed? Because as they continue to get older, are they going to regress? And I'm not too worried about Alexander Ovechkin, but again, you're getting close to 40, so those questions are going to start to arise for Alexander Ovechkin as well. And obviously, Peter Laviolette coming in behind the bench, I think was a great addition. And not that the old guy was that bad. I just think Laviolette is more stable and obviously a huge upgrade for the Washington Capitals. Maybe not Barry Trotz, but I do like Peter Laviolette there for the Caps. Now, at number 4, we have in the Sin City, the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, the biggest addition absolutely this offseason was bringing in Alex Pietrangelo, the former captain of the St. Louis Blues. This is a guy that's going to make a difference on the blue line. And now he's going to be playing with guys like Shea Theodore. I think, that Alec Martinez, Braden McNabb. This is a much improved blue line with Alex Pietrangelo. And not to mention their forward group is going to look different. It's going to probably look younger. Not necessarily worse, but different. And I think we're going to see the emergence more of Cody Glass, potentially as a top 6 center. We need to see the emergence of guys like Mark Stone, or the continued renaissance of Mark Stone as he continues to tear it up there for the Vegas Golden Knights. They're paying him $9 million per, so he's got to get things going there. I really like what they've done with some of the moves. The goaltending is going to be interesting. If Robin Leonard and Marc-Andre Fleury can stay on decent terms, we'll see how that works out. But I'm interested to see what the Vegas Golden Knights do this season with Pete DeBoer. At number 3, we are heading to Philadelphia, as the Philadelphia Flyers are at number 3 in my preseason power rankings. The Philadelphia Flyers are going to be really good this season. Couple key things. Coach Alain Vigneault, good defensive mindset. And they could probably go to the conference finals at the very least, or potentially the Stanley Cup final. 2, you have a potential Vezina winning goaltender right now in Carter Hart. I think that's going to be a huge factor for them. I have him as an early season favorite for the Vezina right now. And 3, the blue line. Blue line. They have a really solid blue line, and I think that's one of the key factors for this team. Shane Gostisbehere, we were just talking about a couple months ago. Over the summer, I made like 2 videos about Gostisbehere getting traded. Doesn't seem like that's the case now. He is playing on the top pair right now. And not to mention, you still have depth guys like Philip Myers and Travis Sanheim. And as well as the top guys like Ivan Provorov. So this is a really solid team. And the 4th thing that I didn't even mention, they have really good center depth. Sean Couturier, Travis Konechny, Claude Giroux. I mean, they have him listed as a winger, but he can play center as well. This is just a really built team. Nicholas Aube-Kubel in the bottom 6. I mean, they just have a lot of great pieces, and I like what they've done. Despite, a couple of changes, they look pretty solid. Now, I think we need to see more from JVR, guys like Jacob Voracek next season, if they really want to, compete, at that high level this year. But if they're firing on all cylinders this season, yikes, you have to watch out for the Philadelphia Flyers. And how could I forget Kevin Hayes as well? So at number 2, these are the top 2 teams in the power rankings for the 2021 preseason rankings. We've got at number 2, quite honestly, the best roster on paper. All right, at number 2, and you can't really argue this too much, is the Colorado Avalanche. Not to mention the the prospect line, which we could see, but it's just what they have right now. Blue line, Eric Johnson, Devin Tays, Cale Makar. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of guys they have on this team that can play. You know, they lost Nikita Zadorov to the Blackhawks in a trade, but they still look so good. And up front, you've got Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, Gabriel Landeskog as your top line, and then you've got the young guys like Tyson Jost, Vladislav Kamenev, who came in, looked really solid. Guys like Jonas Donskoy kind of came out of nowhere. Matt Calvert. So there's a lot of change in Colorado, and I think it's good. Obviously, a guy like Nazem Kadri down the middle as well. This is a really well-built Colorado Avalanche team. And not to mention, we should see Bowen Byram in this lineup for the Avalanche because he is an NHL-ready defenseman. We saw that in the World Juniors. He's ready to go to the NHL. Again, added to the list of really good defensemen to the Avalanche's pipeline. We'll see that once again. And the only question is, can Philip Grubauer stay healthy? I think Pavel Francouz is the kryptonite of this team. I hate to say it. They're going to have to get another goaltender at some point because I do not think Joe Sakic is going to believe in Pavel Francouz by the end of the season. I hate to be that guy, but there's some issues there. And Philip Grubauer is a good goaltender, but his health is a concern. So if I had to say one thing about this Avalanche team, that would be it. And that means at number one, it's the defending Stanley Cup champions. You can't get knocked off till you get knocked off. And that's at number one is the Tampa Bay Lightning. Yes, they do not have Nikita Kucherov. Yes, they've lost guys like Pat Maroon. Yes, they look different. But at the end of the day, this is still a good Tampa Bay Lightning team. And like I said, they're going to look different, but they're going to be mostly the same. You still have Andrei Vasilevsky. You still have Yanni Gourde, Anthony Cirelli, Tyler Johnson, Steven Stamkos coming back into the fold, Victor Hedman, Mikhail Sergachev, Eric Chernak, Kevin Shattenkirk, I believe, came back. Oh no, he went to Anaheim. My bad. Also, you still have a guy like Ryan McDonough. Like, they have such a good team overall. John Cooper has shown he can win a Stanley Cup with his roster. This is the team to beat. And going into this season, not saying they're going to repeat, it's going to be hard to argue that. And if they get into the postseason, Nikita Kucherov comes back, this is going to be a really death team to play against. So we'll see what happens, but that is it for my power rankings. You guys can check real quick. I'm sure I've shown you throughout most of the video the power rankings. Let me know if you like the new font. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you think of my preseason rankings for the 2021 NHL season? Like I mentioned earlier, every Friday night, 6 p.m., we're going to release a weekly power ranking. So stay tuned for that every Friday night at 6 p.m. And if you like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe down below. Make sure to check out our Patreon at Goal Line Hockey. You can support the channel as well as check out our podcast there. If you want to get your question heard on next week's podcast, make sure to leave some comments in the comment section down below. Those podcasts are every Thursday night, so if you're interested, Thursday night at 6 p.m. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.